On today's podcast, we are talking with attorney Jenn Bursch on how we can avoid legal nightmares so your ministry stays safe and compliant.
If it's an actual lawsuit, you can be talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars just in legal fees. Well, that's not based on your religious belief, and the state's going to say, no, you do have to do that, and it doesn't work that way.
Welcome to the Kingdom One podcast, where we grow the church together. This podcast is here to give you big ideas and help you get practical with the tactical. Here's your host.
Kingdom One fam, welcome back to another podcast. We are back with a fresh episode, Avoiding Legal Nightmares, and we all understand that annual legal updates influence the most vital parts of your ministry, from HR, operations, and finance, and getting a clear view of the laws that are changing in 2024 now is imperative. Our Chief Vision Officer, Stephen, has a special invitation just for you.
Hi friends, my name is Stephen, and I'd love to personally invite you to the Above Approach Legal Update on November 2nd. Our friends at Beach Point Church in Fountain Valley have invited us to meet at their amazing campus, where we'll hear from attorney Jenn Bursch and from our HR team here at Kingdom One. Keeping up with the legal landscape is challenging. Unfortunately, the ministry space is not top of mind in Sacramento, so we often have to spend lots of time trying to understand the legal implications for our ministries. The Above Approach Legal Update will include a presentation of all the pertinent California and federal laws going into effect in 2024, a full 2 months before the new year. We'll also touch on some of the hot legal topics and HR best practices while allowing you to ask questions and interact with our speakers. We'll enjoy lunch together, and for those interested, you can join me for an extended time of networking during our afternoon cohort. Tickets to this event are on sale for just $25, and we have a streaming option available if you're not able to make it to the event in person. Space is limited, so please make sure to register early, as we expect to have a full house. Looking forward to seeing you in November for the Above Approach Legal Update.
Again, that's kingdomone.co/HR-events. You can use coupon code podcast5 to take $5 off your order. kingdomone.co/HR-events. Today, we are chopping it up with Jenn Bursch on avoiding legal nightmares for your ministry. And if you're like me, you might be curious, what is the number one issue that gets ministries in trouble with the law?
General answer, the number one thing is employment law right now. Employment law is a lot of what I see as far as lawsuits or even just legal disputes that need to be resolved through the legal process, whether it's through the labor board or through some other court proceeding. But yeah, I think if ministries are aware of where the pitfalls could be and what needs to be avoided, they can have policies and they can have procedures and really a good HR backbone. They often, I think that it won't happen to them, that the employees won't have an issue with them. And that mindset, I think, gets them into trouble. There's a lot that can be done, but just planning ahead, having good policies and procedures, knowing what the law is, or really utilizing someone like K1 to just help figure that out. Someone like Kingdom One who is able to come in and just really help know what the law is and give support prior to a legal issue, prior to needing me. That's the best thing to do.
And right now, are there any employment laws that seem really sticky for ministries to understand or to get their HR team around?
I think it depends on where you're located. I think in California, a lot of them are having issues with independent contractor laws. It's hard to establish an independent contractor. Typically, they really need to be employees. That's really hard for ministries who have worship leaders that are coming in and people coming in and out, and they're paying when they fall under an independent contractor situation and when they really need to be paid as a W-2 employee. Just is difficult, and ministries struggle to know when that line exists, or where the line exists, I should say, and how they can best protect against that. So I would say that's the number one.
So on average, how much do legal troubles cost ministry? I know this could be a range, but can you talk us through the costs of falling into legal trouble?
If it ends up being something that I always try to, and I think any good attorney would try to mediate it or try to resolve it up front. So a settlement based off of a lack of policies and procedures that gets you in trouble with some kind of labor law, you're typically looking between 15 and 30,000, I think, on the average. If it's an actual lawsuit, you can be talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars just in legal fees, much less any liability that's tacked on top of that. Those are harder to guess because as a lawyer, I've seen churches, have $1.5 million of legal fees, and liability all the way down to 200,000. I think those are the outliers, but they happen, and ministries need to be aware that they happen and really do everything they can to avoid them. Because I do think every experience I've been involved in like that, I think there was a point that it could have been avoided very early on. That kind of goes back to question one. What can you do to make sure that you're not in that situation, that you're aware of what the laws are, that you're aware of how you avoid really the hardest points? You can have a lawsuit that has no merit, but a lawsuit that has no merit is a lot easier to deal with than a lawsuit that you have some HR or labor law violations and you're really kind of running behind the 8 ball rather than being able to allow, whether it's your legal defense or even somebody like Kingdom One and an HR team trying to address it from a more aggressive standpoint, because they're able to do that because of the policies and procedures you have in place. So the cost really depends on, again, going back to how well did you prepare up front to know what the laws are and where you need to prepare? Did you do that? And how strong is the lawsuit? If the lawsuit's really strong and it's a worst case scenario, it can be hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not more.
And just based upon that, what are some ways that ministries can protect themselves, against that? Is that, you talk a lot about policies. Can you maybe give us your top 2, top 3 that you think would really help a ministry from getting into legal trouble?
Yeah, I think really clear wage and hour policies, which are when, whether you're an exempt employee, whether you're a salaried employee, whether you're an hourly employee, and what that looks like. Clear discipline policies. I think ministries, they tend to run off of grace, which is a good thing, right? We want to run off of grace, but there's also a legal component to it that you need to be really clear that you're writing people up and you're going through a process. And the write-up doesn't have to be, I think people think that's aggressive. It doesn't have to be aggressive at all. It's just noting what's going on along the way. So if you get to the point where you need to let someone go, you have something just to provide some substantive background to what happened. It really helps a lot with any type of termination situation or any allegation that something else was going on. So policies that center around that, around what a discipline policy would look like, how to deal with HR issues when they arise. Certainly wage and hour issues are really important. The other one that's important right now, particularly in California and other states as well, is mandated reporting, making sure that you have a good policy in place for that, and that you're training on mandated reporting and training on sexual harassment in different areas of the law like that, because that's the best way to avoid liability. If somebody steps out of line in those areas, if you've trained as an organization and you've done what you need to do, you stand the best chance of being able to argue, hey, we did our part. That was on the employee. And that's important.
Can you tell us a story of a time a ministry came close to closing its doors because of a lawsuit or government intervention?
Yeah, I've had ministries that, unfortunately, like Christian preschools, that lost their licensing from not following the legal requirements for licensing. I've had Christian ministries that had lawsuits filed against them that were found to be liable, particularly in areas of harassment and wage and hour issues, severe wage and hour issues that ended up being really severe. And a lot of ministries aren't financially prepared for that. They aren't financially prepared for the cost of even defending the lawsuit, much less paying out any potential liability. So it definitely can cause ministries to close doors. I've seen it cause ministries to close doors. But I think the best way to avoid that is, again, preventative measures, but also looking at your insurance. What does your insurance cover? What can it cover if you were to need it? And then making sure you have some reserves so you're not, to the best of your ability, running that close.
And if there were any tools that a ministry could add to their legal tool belt, what would those tools be, in your opinion?
I think the best thing to do is the policies and procedures, but also having advisors on board that you can call and get a quick opinion from. I think ministries go way too far down the road before they get an expert involved because they think it's just too expensive and we can't afford that. And getting somebody involved early on when it's still in the preventative stage and it's still in the working it out stage before the lawsuit is the best way to avoid the lawsuit. They just wait and think, oh, I'll wait a little bit longer and I can resolve this. We're going to pray through this. And sometimes that works. Sometimes it doesn't, even within ministries. And knowing that you have a team of people around you, like Kingdom One, a good employment attorney that you just have on speed dial. A lot of my clients that I'm general counsel for just call and say, hey, we have this HR situation. How would you handle it? How would you talk to that person? What do I need to do before I let them go? What would you recommend I do in my policies and procedures to avoid this in the future? It's often a 20-minute conversation. It's not an expensive thing. It's just guiding and helping. Kingdom One does a great job with that because of how they do their work. They're able to just provide consistent help that's not too expensive for ministries. I know that that's their heart. That's what's so great about having someone like that on your team. You don't feel like you have to wait until it's too late to ask for the help. You can ask for the help up front, and you should be asking for the help up front before it gets to the point where you're in hundreds of thousands of dollars of legal fees. And, you know, yes, it can cause ministries to close doors. It's also a stewardship issue, right? Ministries are run off of tithes and people's worship, really. They're spending people's worship. And it's a stewardship issue to make sure that we're doing that well. And how we do that well, I believe truly, is having people around us, not wasting money, but to allow us to avoid the pitfalls that will cost more. And having a team that, you know, you spend some time and you make sure you're doing it right up front and addressing it right. That's the best way to go.
Is your ministry above reproach? I know this seems like a weird question, but the truth of the matter is, as Christians, we are called to live above reproach, and 1 Thessalonians even commands us to flee the appearance of evil. Now, this is really important when it comes to keeping your ministry safe because our above reproach trainings are aimed at reducing sexual harassment and bullying, making sure that your staff and volunteers can spot unwanted behavior and stop it before it turns into a legal nightmare. You can go to academy.kingdom1.co to sign up for Teams access to get your teams registered. Deployment is easy with our one-click system, and it's even better when you can bundle sexual harassment prevention training with AB 506 child safety and mandated reporting. I know that's a lot right there, but the truth of the matter is living above reproach is more than training. It is a calling, something that we do as ministry leaders. You can do that today at academy.kingdom1.co.
Yeah, I did religious liberty litigation for the first part of my career, and I'm super passionate about it. Churches definitely have rights, and they should defend and protect their own rights. Having said that, you can lose even if you have those rights, and you have to be aware of that. You want to take a stand, be aware of what the stand could cost you and what the stand could cost the ministry. But I often hear like, well, I mean, you can discriminate based on religious beliefs. That's the core of what those rights mean. You can't discriminate based on race. You can't discriminate based on, other things that really have nothing to do with your religious beliefs, and trying to shoehorn that in, that doesn't work. Courts don't think it works. Now, there are things that like you could technically under the law discriminate under gender based on your religious beliefs, right? Some churches don't have female pastors. I'm not making a theological comment. I'm making a comment that under the law, that could be perceived as gender discrimination. That's protected. 100% that's protected. And if you believe that, you should believe it. Hold it. And I would defend it all day in court, and you should win. However, if you're making a distinction that's not supported by a statement of faith, that's not supported by your bylaws, you could get in trouble for it. And I think the best way to avoid that is to know that things that are important to you, your statement of faith, your statement of beliefs that are going to drive those choices, those need to be in bylaws. They need to be in foundational documents. They need to be in statement of faith. They need to be clear. And you need to be clear as to why you're doing it. That's how you avoid those issues. You get in trouble for them by arguing legally, by arguing that you can, I've seen churches argue, well, I don't have to follow, for instance, like independent contractor laws because I'm a church and it's a worship leader. Well, that's not based on your religious belief, and the state's going to say, no, you do have to do that. And it doesn't work that way. But I think sometimes ministries just take it too far in the sense that they believe I'm exempt from pretty much everything. You're not exempt from everything. You're exempt from having to do anything that violates your religious belief. And certainly courts have held, they're not going to dive into what your religious belief includes or excludes, right? So that gives you a little bit of wiggle room, I guess, there, but don't take it so far out of context that courts can on its face look at it and say, that's not about that. You just don't want to comply with the law. And there are states that's harder, right? If you're in Alabama, you're pretty good to go. If you're in California, you have a lot more regulations and a lot more things that you have to work through. You can work through them. That gets back to the experts and having a team to put together. Even if you're a smaller church, I hear all the time, we're a smaller church, we can't afford a full-time HR professional. Totally agree. That is very difficult. Get a general counsel on board that you can ask a quick employment law question to when you have it. That's going to cost you, maybe $1,000, $2,000 a year. It's not a lot of money. Get someone like Kingdom One on board that is going to be able to come alongside you and cost you a lot less, but still be able to give you that expertise and that help. Those things are still important, even for smaller churches.
Finally, last question for you. As we are putting on an event, Kingdom One, and you'll be there helping us, navigate the 2024 legal updates for California. Can you talk to our audience about why this is important and why the time frame is important? Us doing this in a November timeframe instead of a January timeframe.
Yeah, I think it's important because obviously the laws are going to change. They've already been passed. They just go into effect on January 1st. So the time frame of November allows you to make those changes that you need to make as a ministry to adapt to it prior to the law going into effect. So you're not kind of chasing after it happens. You're able to get on it and have it done and be ready for the new year and all the new laws that come into play. So that's what we'll be going through during that. And I'm excited about the timing. Often they are done in January, and by the time you hear it as a ministry, they just feel like, oh, I'm already behind that. So I'm excited to be able to get a jump on it and help ministries get a jump on it in a time frame that really will allow them to avoid some issues.
Kingdom One fam, I am so glad we got to spend some time with Jenn and listening to all her sage advice when it comes to legal and keeping and avoiding our ministries, of landing in those places where we would be in a lawsuit or we would have litigation that we don't want to go to. And so just to keep in the same vein of keeping us safe, keeping us compliant, you have the opportunity to sit with Jenn, with Kendra, and our HR team at our Above Reproach one-day legal conference. It's November 2nd at Beach Point Church in Fountain Valley, California. You can get your tickets today at kingdomone.co/HR-events. Use the coupon code podcast5 to take $5 off of your order. That's kingdomone.co/HR-events, coupon code podcast5. If you want to drop us a line, you can do so at hello@kingdomone.co. And until we chat again, let's grow the church together.